That makes sense.
That's just how I feel, and I'm sure some people are there with me. I mean, a lot of people really enjoy being in that, you know, group setting where you can talk to other people, you listen to the lecture. It's the only thing you can really focus on, unless, you go out of your way to be on your phone. But otherwise, it's kind of hard to be all that distracted in a classroom.
Yes.
What time is it? 5:59. Okay, we're almost ready to get started. So I'm gonna make. Sorry, what, Amy?
I'm just scrolling down so you can see that schedule.
Oh yeah, I have it on my screen too. But yeah, so I'm just gonna make some announcements really fast before we get started. Week 5, April 29th, same time, 6 p.m. We're gonna have Donna Kay, who's a local tax attorney, and she's gonna be talking about ethics and taxes. We actually have more meetings, a lot of meetings this term. We have one week 6, week 7, week 9, and week 10 as well. And you can see the full tentative schedule there. I'm pretty sure is that mostly set in stone, or is that like it's really going to change a lot?
No, I think it's pretty set.
Okay, so those meetings are basically entirely set up for the future. Ian, if you'd like to say quick, 20 seconds about IMA before we get started. Or maybe not. You might have it on mute. Yeah, which is fine. We're partnered with IMA here at Oregon State Beta Alpha Psi. If you want to join them, they're the more managerial side of accounting. With our more public side, they have a special code, STU Chap 20. I'm pretty sure we've sent that in a million emails. So, it's out there. And yeah, so that's basically all the announcements. Not much this time because, we have an epidemic going on. So tonight we have Jared Siegel, partner with DeLap Wealth Advisory. And he's going to talk with us about choosing your focus through crisis, which is sure to be an interesting topic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you want me just to jump in and start going?
Yeah, I think you should just jump in.
Awesome.
We're all excited to hear what you have to say, man.
Excellent. So just so I understand, we've got, it looks like a bunch of participants. Are they muted? And maybe just submit questions do they have the capacity to submit questions?
They do through we have a chat function, and we also have people can unmute themselves. They're only muted, from their own choice.
Awesome.
So if they have questions, and everybody feel free to use the chat if you have questions, and I'm sure Jared will answer them for you. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, my hope would go ahead.
I'm just gonna ask like Jack or Christian or someone that I can see. Did I make Jared the big screen now?
Yep.
On my screen, he is the big screen. So yep. Yes, I believe you did.
You guys can also raise your hand, and I think I'll be able to see it. So if someone wanted to raise their hand, I can, or Elise, I can chat you too, and if you want to help. Okay, it's all yours, Jared.
Awesome.
Oh, Christian. Oh, you good?
Yeah, I was just showing that people can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me tonight. Excited to have the opportunity to share a few thoughts and ideas, and more importantly, just answer some questions, because we're in unusual times. It certainly creates some adversity, but at the same time, depending upon how we react to it, I think this moment in time creates opportunities as well. So I thought I would start just with just a little bit of background on me, not because it's particularly interesting, but just for perspective or context of where I'm coming from. As was stated earlier, my name is Jared Siegel. I'm a partner at a public accounting firm in Portland, Oregon, DeLap. We have about 120 people. The firm's about almost 90 years old. I lead our wealth advisory practice. So I got an MBA. I elected for concentration in accounting and finance, but ultimately didn't pursue my certified public accounting designation. I ended up going into kind of more commercial risk management, then later on healthcare consulting. But I joined our practice about 10 years ago. And we were chatting earlier, Jack and I, just about kind of these unusual times. There's we're all kind of in an unusual space. Here I am. My current office is actually my master bedroom. There's a laundry basket, some cardboard boxes. These are wild times, and so we didn't get a tremendous amount of heads up that we were shutting down the office. So got a heads up that we're shutting down the office, and so I swung by a Home Depot and I picked up a plastic picnic table, and that's been my workspace for the last 5 or 6 weeks. So never had to do that before, but we're figuring it out. So I thought I would start by sharing a quick story. So presumably many of you are sophomores, juniors, seniors, in contemplating what does this mean here for school? What does this mean for summer internships or summer jobs? What does this mean early in my career? And there's all sorts of things that could be scary or I don't know, they're not positive, right? But depending upon our focus, they could be. What's interesting is right now we're dealing with something at a global level. It isn't just a you thing. Everyone's having to deal with this, and candidly, we don't really have any experience doing this. I mean, I think the last real pandemic that we've had to deal with as a country was probably back in 1918 with the Spanish flu. So this experiment of shutting down the economy isn't something that anyone has ever really had to deal with before. So it's all new to everyone. So there's some challenges there, but there's also some opportunities. So I thought I would just share a quick story with you to provide some context to how I think about things and where that comes from. Back in 2005, 2006, I had taken a job because it offered me the most money. And back in 2005, I was pretty sure I was a recent MBA grad that more money would make me happy. And by 2006 and 7, I was making a lot more money, but yet I still didn't like my job. So I was selling commercial insurance and doing commercial risk management for businesses up and down I-5 all throughout Oregon, using kind of financial statements and income statements to better understand how businesses work and then put together risk management programs to protect businesses. And but I didn't like that job. So I was married and I was in my mid-20s. I decided that was the perfect time to quit my job, was actually at the end of 2007. So probably many of you don't really remember what was going on at the end of 2007, but it was the precipice of the financial crisis. So I quit my job to go chase what I thought was my dream of helping business owners make financial decisions. My wife and I were looking at how do we live our lives, and we wanted her to have the capacity or the ability to be at home with our daughter full time. So she decided to stop working at that season, right as I had quit my job to start a business. And we did that. So we went from dual incomes, no kids, to one child. My wife didn't have an income, and then I started a business, which in hindsight functioned as if I didn't have an income. So we went from dual incomes, no kids, to a kid and no income. And so the financial crisis was a very scary moment in time. We had just purchased a home, and all of a sudden the home was worth a lot less than what it was worth today, or excuse me, it was worth a lot less a year or two later than what we had paid for it. So we were upside down on our house by a lot. My wife didn't have a job. I had spent all of our savings, and the wealth advisory practice that I had started with the hopes of serving Oregon business owners wasn't working because the market actually, from the top of the market to the bottom of the market, it went down 56%. So that's a very difficult time to be making money in the market. And moreover, I was in my mid-20s with with no industry experience, no clients, no track record as a business. And so that was a very scary, difficult time. But many of you probably have taken an economics class and know some cognitive biases that we have. So hindsight bias is an interesting one. And after the fact, you can always make sense of things a lot better than you can in real time. And so with the benefit of hindsight, I think back on that experience of what it was like to have started a business that ultimately failed, to spend all of our money, to buy a house that was worth a lot less than what we could sell it for. I wouldn't change any of it, because if I fast forward now with the benefit of knowing what I know today, that house that I couldn't sell, that we were upside down on, I ended up putting in a renter. It lost money every single month, but the real estate market recovered. And I later 1031 exchanged that one home, our first home, later on into a sixplex today. That's a wonderful, it's been the best investment I've ever made. But it was by accident. It was only because of the situation of the financial crisis. I started a business that ultimately failed, but because I was so fearful of failing, I had courage to do things because I was more afraid of failing than I was of things that I otherwise would have been afraid of. So I made big, bold decisions and action in those moments. One of them being reaching out and building a relationship with DeLapp. And so in that moment of the financial crisis, I was working really hard to build a relationship with DeLapp, because accountants were supposed to be a good source of wealth advisory leads. And that's really what my business at that time was about. And though my business ultimately failed, I forged a relationship that years later turned into an opportunity to become a teammate within DeLapp. And then within a couple of years, ultimately a partner within DeLapp. And then a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, we decided to start a wealth advisory practice. And so my dream of helping Oregon business owners make more predictable, profitable financial decisions became a reality, except rather than having to start from scratch, I have the benefit of a company that has thousands of business owners as clients and a 90-year track record of helping people. And so the trajectory was anything but linear. It wasn't a straight path, but all of those experiences with the benefit of hindsight have prepared me for this moment. And what was challenging and difficult in that moment, 2007, 8, and 9, created this present reality that is a huge blessing for my family. So I've been married now for 17 years. I have 3 kids, 12, 10, and 7. And our wealth advisory practice is the fastest growing part of our entire organization. And I get to work with people internally and externally that are exceptional people. So I just wanted to share that moment, because right now, as you experience coronavirus, COVID-19, it's scary, it's crummy, it's not fun, but there are potentially redemptive things that could come from this. I called one of my clients a couple of weeks ago. I just said, "Hey, how are you doing?" And this particular client is a youngerish owner relative to the size of the company. He founded his company less than 10 years ago, and now he has over 700 employees. And he was in the middle of a $5.5 million project to build out some more office space for his team. And all of a sudden this happened. And so then no one can come into the office, and he's committed to a significant capital outlay, and his business is running into some headwinds. He described it as a forest fire. He said, forest fires aren't fun. No one wants them. They destroy beautiful places. It damages a lot of things. It creates a lot of harm. But ultimately, what comes of it is nutrients is restored, right? It's returned back to the soil, and the canopy is opened up so sunlight can get down to the newly fertilized soil. And ultimately there's like new life is made possible inside of the forest. So it's difficult. It destroyed a beautiful place, but new life is made possible. And then that brings wildlife back to parts of the forest that didn't have it before. So it got me thinking, started reading a little bit more about forest fires just because I thought that word picture was beautiful, because it gave me a little hope in the midst of something that was a challenging thing to find hope in. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with lodgepole pines, but it's a specific type of tree. If you were to go to Yellowstone, it's predominantly lodgepole pine. And what's interesting is the pine cone itself is sealed with a kind of a resin sap that it seals the cone so that the seeds inside of the cone can't actually germinate. So year after year, the lodgepole pine creates these pine cones and then drops them into the soil. Squirrels run around and bury these cones all over the forest, but they can't germinate because they're sealed inside of this resin inside of the cone. It ultimately takes the heat associated with a fire to melt the resin so that the cone can actually open up and release the seed, and so that the seed then can basically spawn the next generation of trees. And so that's a metaphor that I've been using within our own team of sorry about that. A metaphor within my own team, because within each of us, the coronavirus for sure will create, it's going to destroy some beautiful things, right? There's some industries that are going to be challenged here in the near term, and people's careers are going to be disrupted. And candidly, your introduction into the workforce is going to be different than it would have otherwise been without coronavirus. But within each and every one of you, there are seeds that were previously sealed that the coronavirus fire could release. And so I would take this moment in time to really be thoughtful and intentional about inventorying the seeds that are inside of you that otherwise wouldn't have been spawned. They wouldn't have had the opportunity to germinate absent this experience. And so Jack shared right before we started how it's easier to attend class physically and get that opportunity of, there's a specific start time and end time, the structure that a physical experience provides you, the community that it provides you, the infrastructure that it provides you, it makes it easier. And so not having it makes it harder. But much like going to the gym, adversity will strengthen you. You are not fragile. If I were to drop a glass on the floor, the glass is fragile, it breaks. And if I had a plastic cup and I dropped it on the floor, it would bounce, but it's not stronger, it's just not fragile. There's this concept of anti-fragile. And if we think about trees, if we think about your muscles, ultimately that adversity, strain, and those challenges ultimately strengthen the tree. The wind, the stronger the wind, the stronger the tree. The more pressure you put on your muscles, the more strain you put on the muscles, the stronger that you get. And so understanding that you are anti-fragile and that ultimately there is a gift inside of this moment that you are going to launch, and you'll have grit and muscles that the generation that graduated just a couple of years in front of you might not have. Moreover, you might not have the same mortgages that they have. You might not have the same deep roots that they have. And so it's certainly not necessarily a gift, but it could be, depending upon how you want to experience it and how you react to it. So just a couple of thoughts there. The last thing I wanted to share, and then hopefully there's some Q&A, is this concept of mindfulness. I want to just reiterate that what you think about, what you inventory, you'll find. And so if you're looking for the seeds that this coronavirus is going to release within you, you will find that. And if you want to inventory all the things that coronavirus took from you and how you're a victim of this current reality, you'll find that as well. And so what's fascinating is I didn't study anything in science or biology when I was on campus, but I've started to try to read as much as I can understand neuroscience. And what's interesting is if you want to become a more grateful person, all you have to do is spend more time inventorying the things to be grateful for. So in this moment, I've spent a tremendous amount of time writing notes to my team, writing notes to my clients, just letting them know what I'm appreciative for in them. And what's interesting is the neural pathways within your brain. The more you use those pathways, the easier they are to access. So if you spend more time thinking about things that you're grateful for, you'll end up being more grateful. And so essentially I start my day with a gratitude journal because there's all kinds of things in my life that are incredible that if I don't inventory, they're easy to forget because day in and day out, my problems scream, but my blessings whisper, so it's easy to find the problems. They're really loud and they come right at you, but no one's going to point out all the things that are going well in your world. So I guess the last thought before I open it up to some just questions, what's on your guys' minds and hearts is one of my clients earlier this week said, Jared, how do you make muddy water clear? And I thought about it and I was like, add water? And he's like, maybe. He's like, what about stillness? If you let muddy water sit still, the sediment ultimately settles to the bottom. And I appreciate that word picture because life is busy. Think about kind of day in and day out, all the things that you guys juggle, whether it's part-time work, classroom assignments, demands with your friends and your family, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever that they might be. Life is busy, but this social distancing, though it presents a lot of unique challenges, it also presents the opportunity for stillness. And that's a gift. That's a huge gift. And so being intentional with how am I going to redeem this gift? There's all kinds of opportunities there. So use this moment of stillness, hopefully to create a little clarity for you. What are the things that you really value in your life? What are the objectives that you hope to accomplish with this experience being at Oregon State and the investment that you're making in your present self, but more importantly, your future self? What are going to be the outcomes that you're going to prioritize? What's most important to you? And hopefully in this moment of adversity, and it's also a moment of stillness, the muddy water is a little bit clearer. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I thought I'd share kind of as I'm experiencing my first pandemic right alongside you guys. Certainly not an expert here, but just a couple of thoughts. So if anyone had things that were on their mind or heart, I'd be more than welcome to kind of riff on those.
I don't know if you can see the chats, but Rachel chatted, in mindfulness, there's an emphasis on controlling the controllable. However, in the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a lot of things that are beyond our control that are still affecting us. It's important right now to embrace what we have to do, but what we do have agency over, and letting go of what we can't control. Remembering this has helped me in these uncertain times.
Yes. Then Rachel, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in what you just shared. Sometimes in a simple diagram that I'll turn to, which is exactly what Rachel just said. If you guys can think of what a Venn diagram is, a Venn would just be two overlapping circles. And really the concept, kind of close your eyes and visualize this. You have two circles, and one circle is called things that matter. And then you have another circle, it's things that you can control. And now let's merge those circles, and there's now an overlap of things that you control and things that matter. And that's really the stuff that you should focus on. And that's exactly what Rachel's talking about, because we don't control the economy. We don't control COVID-19, but we do control how we respond to it. And that's mindfulness. And so there's tremendous wisdom. So kudos, Rachel.
If anybody wants to ask questions, you can just unmute yourself too.
what are you guys having? What's shaking out for you guys with summer internships? Has that changed for people at this point? Or are you still waiting to hear from organizations?
I'm Jessica. My summer internship is still in effect. I got pretty lucky in that it was very easy for us to switch to digital.
Good.
Yeah, my summer, well, I just have like a weird long form internship, and for us, we just moved to digital. Luckily, in the field of accounting, we can kind of do that. We're blessed to be able to do a lot of digital work, even if it's less efficient. That's kind of how it is.
Yes.
And Jared, Kate asked a question. She said, what would you recommend doing for people whose internships are getting canceled? And the fact that getting a job that is beneficial to a resume will be extremely hard to obtain in this job market.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Again, I would zoom out just for a second to provide context. It's not just difficult for Oregon State students, right? It's going to be difficult for every student in the world to get a summer job this summer. And so if something outside of your control takes away an opportunity that you had previously secured and you went a summer without the work, just understanding that that's not a scarlet letter that would uniquely impact just you. If you looked at the resumes of students as they were transitioning out of university in 2008, 9, and 10, when unemployment was at 10 or 12%, you had some very different looking resumes than you did even just a couple of years after that. So I would say, so that's a place to start, is just context. And then second of all, I would lean into your grittiness. Angela Duckworth wrote a great book. I loved it. It's called Grit, and it talks about passion and perseverance. And so hopefully you chose accounting because of your passion for the subject, amongst other reasons. And so this is an opportunity for you to kind of demonstrate some of your perseverance, your persistence. And so what's really nice is, though the internship might be impacted, we were just talking about it within our own organization today. We don't know when Oregon is going to change its current structure, right? So we're working from home, but we've never run an internship virtually before. And we don't know if our June start date is going to work or not. And so the employers that you partnered with here for your summer work, they're dealing with as much uncertainty as you are. And so I would lean into being flexible. I would be very solutions oriented. Hey, if I couldn't do the job as you traditionally would have structured it, what could I do? Being flexible with the employer. That flexibility might differentiate you from others. So I would look for that opportunity, and I would appreciate that from a prospective intern, understanding that the normal structure might not be there, but if you could propose a structure or contribution to the organization that you might be able to do virtually, that might go a way to create an opportunity for you to get experiences that ultimately grow your aptitude, but more importantly, go on your resume as well, and have the opportunity to build relationships within that organization. So to the extent you can lighten the load of having to think through how you could contribute, that might be a way to retain some sort of opportunity, even if it looks different than what you had originally been hired for. And then changing the subject, but thematically staying aligned. I just want to compliment all of you for choosing a major that wasn't necessarily the easiest major, because in the midst of a lot of disruption right now within the economy, unemployment is quickly increasing. We're not seeing that within our industry. It's certainly going to be impacted because our clients are impacted, but there's a lot of job security within financial literacy. And so getting your getting your degree in accounting, ultimately, finance is merely applied accounting. It provides you just a wonderful career path. I just, I'm super grateful that a mentor had encouraged me to pursue my master's in accounting, even though I never became a CPA. I ended up in a public accounting firm using financial literacy to help clients through these moments in time extract actionable insight for their business. And so once you weather the storm here in the near term, this aptitude and the experiences that you're going to be creating for yourself should provide you a very marketable, very stable skill set that it's a great boat to be in when the waves get choppy, when the waves get big in the ocean around us. Financial literacy and public accounting, finance, at the end of the day, there's a lot of disruption that's occurring within industries, but at the end of the day, accounting is the language of business. And so I don't see that being as disrupted as a lot of other parts of the economy. How we do the accounting might get a little bit disrupted, but what you're learning right now is very meaningful.
I wanted to comment too. This is Elise from Mentors 360. One of the things that we're finding with our professionals that are willing to connect with students, they have a little more bandwidth right now working from home. So as you guys are facing questions, or you've got time, or you're wanting to explore different opportunities and have conversations, now may be an excellent time for you to reach out and just do some research. What types of companies do you want to work with? Who are you interested in? And reach out. I'm happy to connect you with people that we're connected with, or look on LinkedIn and see if, just send a message to some people that have a job that you might be interested in, and see if you can borrow a few minutes with them and just interview them. So now may be a great opportunity for that. And Jared, my question for you to share a couple of thoughts, with things going virtual, how do you lean into relationship when you're working online? Do you have thoughts? I know a lot of knowledge that we gain while doing internships and on the job and mentoring is from working alongside people. So as we are social distancing and being remote, how have you found opportunities to connect with people, or what would you encourage students to do as they are doing internships virtually to leverage relationship and lean into that?
It's a lot of learning. I mean, I've never, DLAP wasn't a virtual organization, and then again overnight we became a virtual organization. So candidly, this tool right now is a tool that we didn't use a lot previously, and now we use all day, every day. So we use GoToMeeting, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams all the time. And for people that hadn't previously turned on their webcam, I'm sitting here staring at a huge picture of my face talking. Not my favorite thing in the world, like growing forehead right now, lots of forehead as my hairline moves. But even though I don't like looking at myself, I love looking at the people that I'm talking to. And so for me, I experience a virtual meeting with video with a level of intimacy that I don't get when I'm just talking to somebody on the phone, and it's 100 times better than an email. I haven't studied in an academic setting communication, but my understanding is that significant amounts of our communication are nonverbal. And so the opportunity to look people in the eyes that I'm not physically in front of, but to create that experience of being in front of them, I think is really valuable. And some of the stuff that you may be doing, just the opportunity to talk, we don't have water cooler talk right now because you don't bump into people at the water cooler. So some of the teams have started to create kind of the virtual happy hour, virtual coffee, and just to create the space for the communication. Today we had a virtual partner lunch. So all the partners in our firm got together and we just ate lunch, talking to one another on Zoom. We didn't have an agenda. It wasn't predominantly wasn't business. It was talking about what's going on with people's lives because we care about one another. And so I guess continuing to reach out to people. I'm extroverted. And so I was sharing with a couple of people kind of vulnerably, when you're an extrovert and you don't get any sort of interactions face to face with people, or very, very limited. I'm struggling with that. Like those interactions with clients face to face out at their business or at our office, or the interactions in the break room, the opportunity to talk to my team face to face about their weekend or what they're doing that afternoon. Not having those is it certainly, I'm having to find new ways to create the energy so that I can go enjoy my day and the to-dos with the same level of vigor that I had previously. So I guess reach out to people without an agenda, and FaceTime, Zoom, GoToMeeting, to the extent you can see people face to face. For most of us, that seems to enhance the experience.
Jared, there's a question. It says, do you think that taking accounting as a major in undergrad or graduate school is helpful to set you up in terms of becoming a knowledgeable business owner, besides just being good with accounting itself?
Absolutely. Again, most of my clients that they are business owners. There are demographics about them that make some consistencies, and there's also some psychographics about them that create some consistencies. And so a lot of the time, the people that are willing to take the risk of starting a business, they often understand sales and marketing really well. They might be an operator a little bit, but mostly it's sales and marketing. And so if you were to create kind of 4 major pillars within any business, you have sales and marketing, you have operations, you have HR, and you have kind of accounting and finance. And so the ability to understand the levers in your business, and essentially accounting and then finance is applied accounting. Most business owners don't really understand the numbers of their business, or the story that their numbers are trying to tell them about their business. And so I think that's wildly important. And so just like any great team, any great organization, you'd want to find people that complement your skill sets. So if you're great at operations and finance and accounting ultimately, but maybe not a rainmaker, so to speak, not a sales or marketer, not a product person, you'd want to find somebody to complement you. But at the end of the day, business is telling a story, and accounting is the language of business. And so that literacy is never going to be disrupted. Those people will always have a role in every industry into the future. So I think it's a very versatile intellectual aptitude and knowledge to acquire. Huge fan.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions? Need to figure out this chat function. There we go.
Are you seeing them now?
Yes.
So you see Rachel's post there?
That I'm an
I think it's
extrovert,
really,
in finance. Yeah.
and not a CPA. I'm surprised by that.
Very. There are very few of us non CPA partners. But it's been awesome. It's a huge gift. If again, I've always just described myself as somebody that's used financial literacy to create clarity for people. And so I did that in healthcare, and I did that prior to starting our wealth advisory practice. And I do it now within our wealth advisory practice. Is really the underlying theme of my entire career is using financial literacy, my ability and desire to build relationships with people to create value, and that value, when you're talking about financial literacy, when the clients aren't masters of it, is to create clarity, because that lack of clarity creates a lot of stress and anxiety. And so to the extent you can eliminate that, the skill sets that you're learning right now in the classroom and you'll ultimately learn in your first job will create clarity and confidence to decisions, because there's no shortage of stress and uncertainty in moments like right now. And candidly, in any market moment, there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. So learning accounting is a great base. And learning how to build and maintain relationships at the end of the day is super important as well, because I'll get on my soapbox here for a quick second and advocate for kind of this concept of sales. There's a guy who wrote a book, Dan Pink. He said everyone's in sales, and so learning how to communicate effectively is, I think, important. So when I say the word sales, most people think of the used car salesman or the life insurance salesperson. You think of a bad personal experience you've had, and there's all kinds of mind garbage associated with that word. But also ultimately, every organization is trying to deliver a product or service, and it's the top line of the income statement for a reason. And so you'll need to sell somebody on why you should be the intern that they hire. You'll need to sell somebody why they should offer you a job. You'll need to sell your manager why you're the right person to run point on that project. You'll need to sell your girlfriend or boyfriend at some point in time, partner, why you're the one for them, right? So at the end of the day, you're always hopefully communicating truth to people and delivering outcomes that will make their life better. And so I've used financial literacy and relationship building ultimately to generate business for my clients and our firm. And so if you ever have the opportunity to step outside of your comfort zone and do things that would complement your financial literacy and that knowledge, I'd encourage you to do it. I have this silly microphone because a couple of months ago we started a podcast within the firm. And what was interesting about that experience was most of the times when you're trying to learn something new, you're doing so in private. There's very few people that get to watch you mess up. So if you're trying to learn accounting, you do your best on the test, you submit it. And really, there's very few people that get to see how you did on that. Just you and who's ever grading your paper get to see how you did on that test. So if you're not great at it, if you're just learning, you get to kind of learn in private, mess up in private. And but a podcast obviously isn't like that. And so it requires unconfident action. And so one of the guests on the show talked about unconfident action, and I like it. I love it. And so there's going to be opportunities here in COVID-19 and early in your career and all into your future. This opportunity to step forward and take action, even though you lack 100% confidence, because that's ultimately how you begin to gain aptitude and gain muscle.
Jared, there's another question if you can see it from.
I was literally just typing to ask if you have a podcast. I do. The podcast is a podcast for the firm, DeLap, and we interview our clients, which are business owners and real estate investors. And then I interview consultants. And so I've interviewed fascinating people. I interviewed a neuroscientist to talk about the neuroscience behind mindfulness. So David Miller was who I interviewed about that topic. I interviewed a guy who grew up in the California foster care system, made it to the NFL, and then got cut from the NFL because of injuries, got a divorce, contemplated suicide, and ended up remarrying his ex-wife, and won American Ninja Warrior, and has a really successful business. And so he's awesome. So Success That Lasts is the name of the podcast. And so you could skim those articles, and we're coming up with new episodes every about 10 days or so.
I see them pop up in my LinkedIn feed. So
yeah,
if you're on LinkedIn, you can look from there too.
Yep. So it's Success That Lasts, and it's a DeLap podcast. But I host it and just try to extract the interesting ideas from our clients.
Yeah, I saw you had the setup and you had the voice for it. So I was gonna ask, and then you mentioned it like as I was typing it. So yeah, that was crazy. It's
been fun. The first several times it's wildly uncomfortable, wildly awkward. The most awkward part about a podcast is I didn't realize this. How do you start it? I was sitting across from the guy and I was like, I don't know I've never done one of these. You just go 1, 2, 3, go. Like how do you start? You start the podcast. Okay, now let's start. So, yeah, it's been fun. I'm super passionate about lifelong learning. And so I guess that's I don't have a lot of do-overs, but I wish if I could go back in time, that's what I would do. Is I had read so many books that I didn't want to read in college because I had to, that I kind of just abandoned books altogether for the first 10 years of my career. And I would encourage you to find ways to consume thought-provoking content, maybe content that you don't always 100% agree with, but to continue to grow to the extent you can embrace lifelong learning. That'll just benefit you in all areas of life. So, don't, right now you're learning and you have the mindset of a student. What's interesting is you'll get to a certain point in your career where people start asking you questions and you feel like there's an expectation that you know the answers. And what's weird is I didn't have that expectation of myself as a student. I was much more comfortable with not knowing. And so learning looks and feels a lot different, at 40 or, I'm 39. It feels different than it did when I was on campus and probably not for the better. So I'd encourage you to continue to just to have an intellectual posture of humility and intellectual curiosity and be a lifelong learner.
There's another question up there. What are some of the challenges that you have working from home?
What are some of the, I would say there's this concept of Parkinson's law, and it's this idea that a project or work will expand to fill the time allotted to it. And so there's less structure at home than there is in the office. And so that's an interesting dynamic that I hadn't had to deal with in a long time. I've got 3 kids. So that's different. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things that are different. So there's a lot of benefits to it. The opportunity to go eat lunch with my kids every single day. But at the same time, like all of a sudden I'll start hearing yelling downstairs and my 7-year-old decided that he needs to do something that my 10-year-old decided that he doesn't need to do. And so now I'm, playing referee with the kiddos downstairs. So I would just say for me, make like a rhythm that's been different, just having to come up with a new schedule or new rhythm that's going to work well for me, work well for my family, work well for my team, work well for my clients. There's fewer boundaries, which is different. Again, it's not worse, it's just different. So the shared space, both physically and emotionally, intellectually, of being in my bedroom, surrounded by my family, but surrounded by my work and surrounded by the needs of my team. So just, I guess I do better with structure. So I've had to create some structure of here's how I'm going to start my day. Here's how I'm going to plan my day. Here are the moments of like when I shut it down. So I can have some of those boundaries in my life. But that's kind of, it's still ongoing. I mean, cause I'm only 4, 5, 6 weeks into this. So continuing to iterate each week, what went well. I like a couple of questions, some questions that I'll ask myself. And if you guys want to jot these down, I wish I had known these a little earlier. I was feeling overwhelmed a little while ago, and I hired a consultant to come coach. We wrote out a personal strategic action plan for me. This is back at the end of the year. I was just really stressed and overwhelmed. And so we went through this exercise of must, should, could, won't. So just visualize it could be like a dartboard with must in the middle, or it could be quadrants. It's my mom. She's committed to FaceTiming me. So must, should, could, won't. And so that was something that was helpful to me because there's certain things in your life that you must do that you can never outsource, you can never delegate. And unfortunately, I had lost clarity around what are those things. And so my must box had too many things in it. Things that are actually more should or could were in my must box. And so that's why I was feeling overwhelmed. So as you're sitting here kind of organizing your days, your weeks, think through what must you do, what should you do, what could you do, more importantly, what won't you do. And so, when you're having to try to knock out projects and you're sitting next to your Xbox, that's probably like, hey, I won't play Xbox right now. Like figure out what those look like. And then the other exercise that I work through with my team and my partners often is what's right. You know, really inventory what's going well, because if you don't ask that question, what's right, no one's going to answer it for you. So take time to celebrate the wins. What's right, what's wrong, what's missing, and what's confused. And as we think through those last three questions, what's wrong, it's easy. Most people default to something that's wrong. You only put things in what's wrong if it's been missing or confused for a really long time. And so those are great questions to ask when you're kind of trying to create clarity in your own head. Must, should, could, won't, and what's right, what's wrong, what's missing, what's confused. Are there any other? Is your podcast solely internal for delay employees or delap?
I think it means delap. Yeah.
Yep. No, it's you can find it on wherever you get your we syndicate it to all the different channels, so you can grab it. I get it from iTunes, but if you pull it down, we syndicate it to I think 3 or 4 different publishers, so you should be able to find it. Success That Lasts. My name is Jared Siegel, and the
What made you think to do that? Like, what gave y'all the idea to do that?
I had an experience where I was visiting with a client, and the client was worth over $100 million, and they were interviewing me to explore if we could support them from a family office perspective. And so we sat down, and the one partner started talking to the other partner about what the scope of work would look like and how we could be helpful. And the spouse turned to the person that had organized their partner that had organized the meeting and said, I don't want a family office. I want somebody to want to spend time with the family. I want somebody who loves me as much as they love money. I want somebody who, and just went down this list of all of their hurts. And I realized that people struggle with how to define success, because there's an inner success and an outer success, and they're both important, but they often compete with one another. And sometimes it can be challenging because one measure of external success is achievement, and financial success is awesome in the sense that it creates resource, but it's super measurable and tangible. It's easy to look at the financial statement or my personal financial statement to determine the value. And I kept seeing this issue over and over again, where our clients were financially independent, but that yet they were not financially free. And what I mean by that is their balance sheet provided more than enough so that they didn't have to work anymore. But because their self-worth had become their net worth had become their self-worth, and their identity had been so closely connected to that they couldn't be free from it. And so I just wanted to have conversations about how hard it can be to be a leader in an organization when you're at the top, and how it's challenging to compete with the inner success and the outer success. And I thought we could courageously provoke conversations to introduce the idea, to introduce the conversation to our clients in a way that would be non-threatening. And so I just thought that it would be a great platform to do it. And so I volunteered to try to figure it out. And so we started on that at the beginning of the year, and it's been going well. We also have incredible clients. They're wonderful. They're amazing people. They give so much of their time, energy, and financial resources to the community and the world around them. What's interesting in public accounting, coming from outside of public accounting, most industries, when you start, if you start in retail, where you start, your newest employees often interact with the clients the most. But I observed that in professional services, that's not necessarily the case. Kind of there's you start serving kind of the staff is working with the seniors, and the seniors are working with the managers, and it could take a little bit of time before a new entrant within a public accounting firm is getting meaningful face time with a client to really understand their head and heart. And so I wanted our team to understand the clients that we're serving, the families that they're serving, and kind of the heads and hearts of our DLAP clients. And so I thought that that would be a neat way to share with them who our clients were in a more intimate way when they're coming and going from the office or coming and going from an audit or something like that. So there's a couple of different audiences that have really leaned into the podcast, but I just wanted to explore what does it mean to be successful, because it means so many different things to different people, but just to be intentional about those conversations.
Oh, that was a great response. That's not at all what I was expecting you to say. I love it. If you look at your chat, Rachel asked or has a really good question.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. No, so right now you have less margin in terms of the type of stuff that you might have the time or bandwidth to learn about. And late, so I just think like there's different seasons of life. On campus, I didn't read a book that I wasn't required to read. I didn't read things that I wasn't going to be tested on. Right now, the personal strategic action plan that I wrote, I'm committed to reading 45 books a year. And so I know what I need to do per quarter, and I know what I need to do per month. And so I track all of these different goals, and the goals are outcomes. I try to create behaviors that support my identity. And because I identify as a lifelong learner is going to be somebody that consumes a lot of creative, original content, hopefully at some point produces original creative content. And so it's less about reading the books necessarily so that I could say I read 45 books last year and I'm going to read 45 books this year, but it's really about aligning my behaviors with my identity. And because I am a lifelong learner, I will create the space to read. So I blocked time on my calendar. It's mostly nights and weekends. And sometimes if I'm driving, I'll actually use an Audible or something like that. So I'm not physically always reading 45 books. I'm read a lot, but it's like I'll supplement with Audible. So it's about prioritization. And so I would just say later on, you'll have maybe a little bit more margin, and you'll have the opportunity to plan it. Because if you don't plan it, you don't prioritize the space, you don't calendar block it, it's easy for less important priorities to take over that space. So just being intentional about your calendar, because the one thing I said that earlier, I wish I had learned earlier that every time I said yes, I'm saying no. I wish I knew that. I didn't learn that early enough in my career. Every time I say yes, because you only have 24 hours in a day, even though I'm not audibly saying no to something else, functionally I'm saying no to something else. And so sometimes the right answer is saying no to something that's a good thing so that you can say yes to something that's a great thing. And so if lifelong learning is a priority to you, you're going to have to say no to other things. So that was just a quick thought on that.
And you might have answered the next one. Nuha has a question, but I think you might have kind of answered that. And then there's a book question.
I suffer. So the question would be, what's your top favorite books to recommend to college students? I suffer greatly from recency bias, meaning I love the books that I read most recently. So I have different books that I enjoy, so I don't have like a rote list of books that I recommend to college students, but the ones that come to mind, the ones that I think would be most interesting, Adam Grant is a professor at Wharton University of Pennsylvania, Wharton College, the business school there. He wrote a book called Givers and Takers, and essentially it's an exploration of generosity as a life strategy. I love that. So I would encourage somebody to read that book, because it just talks about how most of the world, they're matchers. It's essentially quid pro quo. I give to get, right? I'll match whatever you do. So if you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. If you give to me, I owe you one. And, there's certain percentage of the world that are takers, they're exploiters. Most aren't, but a few are. And then there's a minority of people that are just generous, and they use generosity. Essentially, it's not a give to get. They're just generous people, and they might not necessarily climb the ladder fastest, but ultimately they catch up and get ahead because there's so few of them and they're cherished. So I love that. I deeply value the concept of grit. I think that figuring out the things in life that you're passionate about and introducing the level of persistence necessary to chase it down is awesome. So I'd also encourage that book by Angela Duckworth called Grit. It's actually influenced the way that I coach and raise my kids. And then obviously there's an infinite number of other books that are more subject matter specific, but just if you learned how to be generous and gritty, you'd go a long way. Generous, gritty, and no accounting, the world is your oyster.
Jared, there's another one I remember I read based on your recommendation, The Made to Stick. That was really good, and just having that mindset early.
Yeah.
What was it called, Elise?
Made to Stick. I'll let Jared talk about it since he's on the mic.
Yeah, no. Made to Stick is a book written by Dan and Chip Heath, and it's a really interesting. I like all of their stuff. They've written numerous books. That one I found particularly interesting because so much of life and relationships is about communicating in a way that when you're not there, people remember what you said, and that's super important. And so if you can become an effective communicator, your ability to add value to people's lives and organizations is huge. If we were to think about like a big pickup truck, what would make a big pickup truck effective is having a lot of horsepower. That's one thing. So let's call that your knowledge, but having tires that it can actually grab the earth and move the truck forward is also important. So that would be traction. And so that would be your capacity to communicate, right? So having the knowledge is one thing, but if you can't share the knowledge in a way that others can consume or understand, it's not as valuable. And so I thought that book was probably the best book I've ever read on effective communication techniques. And certainly I've benefited wildly in my career, both internally and externally within our organization, being able to communicate ideas that hopefully people remember when you're not there.
Well, thank you, Jared. I think we're going to wrap it up for today because I believe 7 was our cutoff time.
Awesome.
So thank you so much for the presentation, or the talk rather. I actually took a lot of notes, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. I wanted to say real quickly, hold on.
This
Hold
is
on. I got a present
already.
I got my present.
Oh, it's already there.
Well, you can't see it yet. It's all wrapped up. It is an Oregon State. I think it's a pot. It's a hot pot. Is that right?
Yeah, like a trivet.
Yes.
Makes me so happy.
Nice, nice.
There you go. Thank you.
Everybody needs to know that
Let's go,
Jared
Beavs.
Jared was the kicker for the University of Oregon, so we had to send him a beaver. Thank you.
I like it. Go Beavs, right?
Nice. Go Beavs.
Awesome. All right. Well, if Elise has my contact and Amy has my contact as well. So if I can be of any assistance, anyone has any questions that I didn't get to, let me know how I can be helpful. And again, just this is a gift. It's not always a gift, but take the time to inventory what seeds might be inside of you that this coronavirus fire might give you the opportunity to let hatch. So appreciate the opportunity to visit with everyone.
Thanks, Jared. And you guys, we do have mentors that are available. So if anyone's finding themselves with some extra time and you just want to chat or connect, let Amy know and she can reach out to me and I can connect you with other people in different industries or just to have someone to talk to.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Yep.
All right. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Hey, Amy. Can you send me the recording after this so that I can see if
Oh,
we
yeah,
could put it
here.
on the website?
Okay, I'll stop it really quick.